Yes, like 3 main counties. That would be. I mean, I know it's her. She's a great friend of the library. Get somebody from Essex.
The suggestions I have would be interesting. I don't have to be with my kids.
Yeah. So I started. And that's the truth. So she said, please call me and let me know about my
But.
So depending on.
Yeah. Oh, I will always sear into my memory because I was in this. And when they said who did, everybody was all in on me. I'm looking at these people going, what are you doing? I'm the murderer.
No.
It turned out to be.
A great way to cut the film addiction is to turn your settings to black and white. Is that it's amazing what not having a colorful.
I'm gonna turn on the video and see what's going on here.
They were like, just that helps, seems to just kind of cut it a little bit, makes it a little bit less fun.
If I just go to traffic and I'm sucked in.
Oh, I know, and then the next thing I know, it's a half hour later, and I'm like, what have I just done? Yeah, no, I was just, it's funny, we were literally just researching it this morning. I was like, what can I do? And there are apps that you can download that every time you go to open another app, it will ask you, it makes you pause and goes, why
It's
do you?
growing.
And it'll say things like, is it boredom? Is it this? And it'll make
Rename.
it. And then if you still want to go through, you can do it, but it makes you have that pause for a second. So I know, right?
What?
Yeah.
And there's a one.
I love the New York Times, yeah, me same here. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Spelling bees, yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, I know. Sometimes so easy, other times.
I play in the morning and then that's.
It is not unheard of for somebody to wander in, do a couple of
Right.
and say, hey, I show.
Yeah, yeah. And then it's just so easy to do that, like, let me just check this one thing on social media, or let me look up that
I'll see you in the meeting.
one. Next thing you know, taking a deep dive into whatever.
Because you're here.
Right. Yeah, yeah. No, because part of it is an emergency thing, because you're like, how are people gonna get in contact with me? Yeah, exactly, exactly. And then, you know, that's like, put it across from the other side of the room. That you'll
It's not showing you.
less likely to do
It says
that.
you're here.
Right, yeah, and so let me just.
Maybe you haven't been welcomed into the meeting yet.
I know, I do just let me check my calendar. What have I got going on
Look.
tomorrow? It's the
It's
slow.
on.
Oh.
Because you're here.
Right, right.
Huh?
Yeah, it's a little bit not as big a string.
Yeah, exactly.
You should leave it. Yeah, we should leave it. That'll be the opening.
I might not have welcomed you yet.
So it's hybrid. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but your name should be here. And your video's on and your audio's on. I'm waiting for your name to pop up.
Godspeed. Hopefully international's not gonna be affected.
It's on this car.
So then, other flights, I don't have to leave for times. There for 8 hours. Out again, you woke up, you had a train ticket, because you're here 4 in the morning, you had a train before 6 in the
If you're
morning.
looking for a.
You want me out of here or?
That was. Drinks around and ahead of them.
It says your audio. Let me see. No, it says you're on.
And then you get to wait later again for the hour.
It says your video is on. Well, at some point in time, you can say. This is
Wow.
recording.
Well, it's actually, rethink.
Very fun.
Driving my daughter's in.
I don't know if I could ever get. I mean, that is literally, you gotta be.
But no, I just, okay, I'm just feeling every 6 months we have to go to the movies. Kids are all over. It's a very, it's a 5 seconds. I'm done now.
It was. It's a pretty decent stage.
And then comes, and then you get into.
You're here. What is sign in? Oh, sign in.
I'm not being there.
Everybody else, though, is. Just want to let you know, we'll be starting the program in about 3 minutes.
Everybody's just.
They did, what they got to find. They would go out in that seat, the grill was under.
See, they're all sitting there eating.
Hey.
Thank you.
Why is that person just? Are we broadcasting?
Oh, it's being recorded.
But I mean, is it?
People are on, yeah.
That's what I was going.
Where's the camera? I'm gonna make sure it's on my good side.
It's gonna spin around and get all.
It's gonna spin.
It's getting all this.
It's getting all the guys. Definitely that's like.
There's no escape.
No, I had one last fall.
Is this the first one? I was gonna say, I don't remember the last time we got together.
Oh,
We have canceled this. But, she was on last year.
All right.
I wasn't able to log on. That's fine. So that was just my accident.
Well,
I remember my high school, my senior year.
My allergies.
Tell me twice. We have to sign something. I love.
And I said it when
I got it.
You're ahead of me.
I had no voice. And I had a conflict. Strong boundaries. It's fantastic, right? When I get.
You ready?
Muting everyone. Zoom. I was just muting
Yeah,
everyone.
okay. So I don't have to worry about that.
Did I take your seat?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to First Amendment Libraries and Library Trustees, presented by the Trustee Development Committee of the Buckles Organization. This is our first live performance in a couple of years. We're also joined online by a number of people. Welcome to you folks out there as well. My name is Tom Madru. I'm a trustee at the Borough Park Ridge Library, and I am co-chair of the Trustee Development Committee. Caitlin Hull over here, our gracious host and the director of this wonderful library, is also co-chair. And I just want to say a couple of things before we get started. If you are online, please stay muted while Amanda is speaking. I think that's basically been taken care of by Caitlin. As far as questions go, we will ask for questions from the audience, and also for online folks, you can put it in the chat box. And also, again, it's a while since I've had to do this, so I'm just remembering things. We have to tell you where the ladies and gentlemen's room is. It's right outside, right to the hall. It says women on it, but it's at this point to be utilized by both. Okay, I would like also to introduce a couple of people who are here from the Trustee Development Committee. So if I call your name, just kind of wave your hand. Mike Biolano from Westwood, in the back there. Lynn Kloss, a friend from Teaneck, even further back. They obviously know the deal. The further you go, the less you get in trouble. And of course, I mentioned Caitlin previously, and of course, the redoubtable Darlene Swisstock, our Buckles liaison, who, no matter what anybody tells you, none of this happens without her. So, but before we start, and I introduce Amanda, I would like to introduce a former member of the Trustee Development Committee, and that shows you where you can go in this organization. And she is now the president of Buckles, Mimi Hoy, from the director at Hasbrook Heights. So if you'd come up and say, you down in the words, I appreciate it.
3,000.
Good evening, everyone. Warmest welcome to tonight's program. It is such a pleasure to be able to meet in person and to be able to come together and talk about issues that are facing our libraries. You play an intricate part as your role as a trustee. You do so much for your libraries and for your communities, and it is so refreshing to be able to come together and really brainstorm and address issues. Lately, libraries have been under attack for many things. Never have we seen issues such as that. But you know what? I feel that through growth and perseverance and challenges, we're going to overcome them. We're going to be stronger, and we're going to be able to come together and show the world what libraries can do and what we can do for our communities and really inspire others to follow in our footsteps. So we are that anchor, and I am looking to you as trustees to be able to find those answers and coming together to work for the better good of what we do. So thank you. And please enjoy the program. And I want to say thank you so much for Maywood for hosting.
Thank you, Mimi. And now I would like to introduce Dave Hanson, the Buckles Executive Director, who would like to say a few words of welcome.
Thank you, Tom. I just want to say, Tom and I have the same tailor. We're very excited to be here today. He's located in Hackensack. If you want to know, we'll give you the number. I wanted to start by saying thank you. We really do. Thank you. Libraries don't exist without trustees. Okay? So if you're a trustee sitting here today, we literally do not exist without you. And let me just tell you, this is a heck of a time to be a trustee. Okay? And I gotta tell you, every time we wake up, we hear terrible news. And I'm not here to tell you that it gets any better. But today, before we hear this amazing presentation by this amazing woman, I did want to give you just a little bit of hope, right? I wanted to tell you about some things that I hope you as trustees are paying attention to, because I believe it was just yesterday, the first ruling in the IMLS case happened. And if you didn't hear, the libraries won. I was gonna say something else, but the libraries won that initial injunction. Now, it doesn't mean it's over. The fight continues and it's gonna go all the way up. But if you wanna have some pride today, just remember that that lawsuit was brought by a bunch of states. Do you know what one of those states is? New Jersey. All right? So New Jersey, on the behalf of all of us here, fought. And they're gonna continue to fight because of things like what Amanda's gonna tell you, but about how important it is, because there has never been a library, well, never been, but not here in New Jersey, where you ever walked in the door and somebody said, how did you vote in the last election? Nobody ever said, what do you believe? Nobody ever said, well, we don't really want you to read that book here. Because we are for everybody. And that's what that judge said in that ILS hearing. That's why we are here. That's why you guys are so very important to the future of libraries. So thank you so much. Enjoy the evening. Thanks to Tom. Thanks to Caitlin. Thanks to everybody who's put this on. And we'll let the really big important person talk now.
That's not me. Now it's time to get started with our program. Thank you for the setup, Mimi and Dave. And I would like to introduce our speaker tonight. Her name is Amanda Eigen. She is the head of library services and the assistant director of Maplewood Memorial Library. And she is also a certified law instructor for certified law for libraries trainer. And we're thrilled to have her here tonight. And Amanda, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm so pleased that Tom removed the microphone. It would never occur to me, and it's so much better. Thank you to Caitlin and Tom and the Trustees Development Committee and to Buckles. And to reiterate, thank you to all of the trustees. So welcome. This is a program on the First Amendment, libraries and library trustees. I am Amanda Eigen. I'm the Assistant Director at Maplewood Memorial Library. I am a member of the NJLA Intellectual Freedom Committee and the NJLA Administration and Management section. And I am a certified law for librarians trainer through the American Library Association Office of Intellectual Freedom. I am not a lawyer. I am a librarian trained to provide legal information, not legal advice or counsel. So when we hit the Q&A, there will, I'm sure, be questions that I should not and will not answer, but I will direct you to people who are able to do so. This is a safe space. We're going to learn a lot. We're going to get into the law. And what we say here stays here. But what you learn here, I hope you take with you and share. We are recording, which is great, but we will stop recording, I believe. Where's Caitlin? Are we gonna stop recording for the Q&A? If you want me to. Let's see what comes in, but we know people can put, if you have questions that you would prefer to submit anonymously, that's why I would like to use the chat for that. So that's fine. Okay, our goals. We're going to talk about the First Amendment. We're going to talk about the First Amendment and how it applies to libraries. We'll move on to talk about First Amendment audits in libraries, and then we will get to the role of you all, the library trustees. Let's dive right in. The First Amendment. The First Amendment states that Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. Simple, right? It protects the right to speak and receive information. It applies to adults and children. My notes don't match my slide, sorry. It applies to government entities, not private entities. And it applies to all speech unless that speech is designated an unprotected category of speech by the United States Supreme Court. And that would include obscenity, incitement, child pornography. Hate speech in and of itself is not guaranteed protection unless it falls into these categories. So, how does this apply to libraries? We're going to talk about the library as a space. A library is a dedicated public forum. Oops. There are three types of forums. There's a traditional public forum like a park. There's a designated public forum or a limited public forum like a library. And then there's a non-public forum like a government employee's office. A designated public forum is property that the state has opened for expressive activity by part or all of the public. It's created by purposeful government action, and it's generally accessible to all speakers. What makes public libraries designated public forums? So public libraries are perfect examples of public forums for their access to information, but not unless specifically authorized by the library for other kinds of expressive activity, like speech making or distribution of pamphlets, soliciting. But there are rules and restrictions. Reasonable use. And this is where your mission and policies come into play. We're going to be talking about this a lot. This is, to me, this is where we shine, where we have to shine, where we have to be strong and vigilant. But more about that later. So for now, libraries can establish reasonable rules for use. A library's power to regulate patron behavior goes beyond cases of actual disruption. So it can be tied to the safety of your staff and your patrons. And it can be tied to the use of resources, computers, and materials. Designated public forum restrictions include content-based restrictions. These are generally unconstitutional. They must pass strict scrutiny. They have to show that there is compelling government interest in the restriction, that the restriction is narrowly tailored to achieve that compelling interest, and that there is not a less restrictive alternative. An example of a content-based restriction that was upheld by the Supreme Court occurred in Tennessee. In 1992, there was a law that provided for a 100-foot campaign-free zone around a polling location. So that's an example of a content-based restriction. Viewpoint-based restrictions are not permitted in any forum, and these are the kinds of restrictions that we see popping up in challenges to materials, challenges to individuals. But then there's time, place, and manner restrictions. These must be content neutral and reasonable in the light of the nature of the forum. So for example, capping the number of people that can attend an event in a designated public forum. Okay, and there is case law to back up these types of restrictions. Some of you may remember Kramer versus Board of Police. This was right here in New Jersey, in Morristown. Kramer was an unhoused individual who was, he was really disruptive to patrons and staff at the Morris Library, and he had an odor that was very distracting to the people who were trying to use the library. So finally, he was banned from the library, and he took it to court. But the restriction based on hygiene was upheld, and but the other findings were remanded. It was remanded for additional findings. Brinkmeyer versus City of Freeport. This one's interesting. This restriction for harassment was found unconstitutional. The policy they found was too vague. It said something like a patron may not look at another patron so as to make them uncomfortable. Very, that's a very subjective judgment, and the court said you have to make that more specific. And then People versus Taylor in 1995, this was a restriction for playing games that was upheld, and 9S Board of Trustees in 2003, this was a restriction on bare feet that was upheld because, because ew, exactly, yeah. So we're gonna jump right into First Amendment audits. A First Amendment audit, and we're focusing on First Amendment audits in libraries. A First Amendment audit occurs when a person or people claim the right to record in a public space, like a library, and they say, this is granted by the First Amendment, I can film wherever I want. The goal in a First Amendment audit is to provoke the public employees into violating, or for the person who's doing the recording to perceive a violation of their First Amendment rights. They then post the video to YouTube or other social media platforms. They get a lot of clicks. And they use this or try to use this video as evidence for a legal claim against the targeted public space or its officials or employees. So remember when we talked about what kind of public forum a library is? It's a designated public forum. So the law says that in designated public forums, the person responsible for the space only has to allow First Amendment activities that are in keeping with the nature of the space, even if that space is open to the public. So again, policies. The law provides full constitutional protection to expressive activities only when those activities are consistent with the mission or the purpose of the space, or they're expressly allowed in the space. What can we do? What can we do about these First Amendment audits? Have your policies. Have your policies, have your mission, have your behavior policy or rules of conduct, and have a rock solid collection development policy. These policies need to be there to back you up, and they are easy to share verbally. Have them posted in areas where they can be seen, and be familiar with the policies and the safety plan. Who's in charge during each shift? How do you de-escalate a situation? Know the processes for dealing with unruly patrons. Know how to involve law enforcement if necessary. And this is all super important for the board to know as well, because you are the drivers and the supporters of the policies within the library. So given that these First Amendment audits are often using filming or photography, should we have a filming policy? This comes up at every presentation that I do and every presentation that I attend. The right to film in a library exists. A patron can come in and film within a library with reasonable limitations, and those limitations include respect for patron privacy, the maintaining of behavior policy norms, And note areas where people may not film, staff only, perfectly okay. And that can also include in your behavior policy, no yelling, no threatening or interfering with the enjoyment of the library or library business for other patrons or staff. Okay. We're moving fairly quickly, but I have a feeling there will be great conversation following, so I'm just gonna get through and then we can chat. The Library Board of Trustees. Who are you? You are volunteers appointed by elected officials. You're willing and able to work with local government. You are willing and able to actively participate in and advocate for this most vital community resource, the library. That includes attending monthly meetings and attending and participating in library events. Some boards even have a mandate that you have to attend one library event a month. Something to consider. And you bring personal or professional skills to the table, human resources, finance, strategic planning, social work, project management. These are all valued skill sets that people bring to library boards. And I'm sure many, if not all of you, have many or not all of these qualities. And I think this is really one of the most important pieces of who you are. You reflect the cultural and professional makeup of your community. I want to talk for a second about the communication chain on the board. We're going to go from the bottom up. I don't know what happened to my arrows. There were arrows there. The library staff communicates with the library director. The library director communicates with the board president. The board president communicates with the board of trustees. The board of trustees communicates with the board president, the library director, and the staff. That is your chain of communication. What does the board do? You provide governance and support. You focus on the values and the long-term planning for the library, the mission, strategic initiatives, and library policies, which are, as we know, so important to what we're talking about tonight. You oversee one staff member, and that's the director, from their hiring to their evaluation, and if need be, unfortunately, to their termination. And you are guided by the law and policy. I want to direct you to these foundation documents. You'll receive these in the PDF and a list of resources following tonight's event. So we have the ALA Bill of Rights. The ALA Bill of Rights states that libraries are forums for information and ideas, and that everyone should have equal access to information without censorship or discrimination. Then the freedom to read and freedom to view statements. There are two different statements. One is for reading, one is for viewing. They both say that people have the right to read or view and explore ideas freely, even if others find those views unpopular, controversial, or offensive. And that freedom of expression and access to information are essential to a democratic society. And the ALA Code of Ethics provides professional standards for library workers and all those who are affiliated with the library to ensure that we uphold the highest ethical standards in our work and in our relations with the public. And now I want to spend a minute talking about the New Jersey Freedom to Read law. So this law was introduced as a bill by Senators Wicker. It passed in December of 2024 and it goes into effect at the end of this year. And we are very, very fortunate to have this law. We follow, is it Illinois, Dave? Do you know? Illinois, and a couple of other states, but we really are forerunners in this. The freedom to read law prohibits censorship of library materials based on content or viewpoint. It protects diverse materials and their authors, including materials that reflect protected classes under the New Jersey law against discrimination. It provides immunity for library workers against defamation or libel. And I can point you, we can talk about why that is important. And it requires collection development and reconsideration policies at all libraries, public and school. Also critical for the world we are in right now. So how can you as board members support your library workers? Adopt clear policies. Foster a culture of intellectual freedom. Provide institutional and, when needed, legal support. Promote staff training and education on intellectual freedom, on censorship, on patron rights, on handling book challenges professionally and calmly. And please publicly defend and advocate for library values wherever and whenever you can. Shout them from the rooftops. Time for questions. Yes.
Hi.
Hi,
How are you? I'm kind of new with this.
welcome.
Thank you. Policies or policy manuals. Kind of done a little research and I'm not quite sure on my town's library website. Policy manuals, should they or can they or why not are they not on the website for people who go on there to look at what the policies are?
So the question is about library policies and basically transparency. So when you go on the library's website, you don't see the library's policies.
Yeah, so far.
Okay.
Everything and.
Did you ask your director
I
or ask
actually,
your
yeah,
board director?
I
to ask?
actually asked the director, I'm kind of waiting for a response and, I was a former council person, so I'm kind of used to policy manuals and what have you. So when I was appointed, I was like, okay, let me check out the policies and I didn't see anything, but I did notice other libraries have their policies posted on their websites.
So I'm repeating the question so that people online can hear. So you didn't see policies for your library, but you are seeing policies that are apparent for other libraries. So, you know, even though we're part of a consortium, every library maintains a level of autonomy. I would go through the proper communication channels and see if there's a reason why those policies aren't posted. In my experience, it makes it a lot easier to use the policies. I don't like the word enforce, but follow and use the policies if they are readily available to everyone. So that people who are walking in the door know what's expected. I mean, it's a community space. But I can't speak to why that's not the case, and it isn't in some libraries.
Right. Okay, thank you.
And I would say also, as long as they're available, like the real important thing is that the staff and the people who need access to them to follow them or to use them have them.
Thank you.
Yes.
Explain more about the audit that you mentioned. Who would be performing that audit?
Sure. So the question is to explain more about an audit and who would be performing that audit. I don't know much about the auditors who have performed the audits that I'm aware of. I will tell you that they are provocative and they are looking to engage and to create a scene. So for example, there was an auditor, a group of them, it was a couple of young men who were going around libraries in Essex and Union County. And the directors all talked to each other, so, you know, when they came to Maplewood, we had heard about them. But they were, they, in Springfield, they, really caught the staff off guard. And what they did was, they came in, there were two of them, one was filming and one had a baby in a, I don't know if in Springfield they used like a Bjorn, or I think they were using the stroller. And they had a recording of a baby screaming, I mean, absolutely, really just crying horribly. And they asked they said to the patron, you know, it's been a while, they let it go on, and then they said, you kind of have to, you have to take the baby out. And the auditor said, I'm just gonna change their diaper, maybe that will work. Took the baby into the bathroom, baby screaming, comes out, baby still screaming. And the staff member was standing outside and said, you know, you really need to go, I'm sorry. And they started punching, hitting what was not a baby, but the staff member didn't know that and started screaming and, you know, called the police. And this was, a moment where the staff member was caught off guard, the director was caught off guard. I mean, it's really kind of harrowing, but the auditors got what they wanted because they were told, you know, stop filming, you have to leave, and they were looking to incite and engage, and yes.
So maybe auditors not really the right
I was
term.
just gonna say that, it makes it sound like they're
Yeah.
acting in an official capacity.
Well,
They're just
they are
Provocateurs.
civic auditors. I mean, they are, you know, you're violating my First Amendment rights
Right.
by telling me I have to leave
Okay.
because this baby is crying. Yes.
Do you have specific resources where they do like role play so that the staff can learn how to react when these things are presented?
I don't, but I can point you to someone who does. I can find out.
Because it's great we have a policy that we just updated because of this, but I do think that's
I'm
sort of.
sorry.
We do have policies that we updated in neighboring libraries that actually went through this.
Because of
But
my
I think if there was like a role play tutorial that staff could engage with,
special
it'd
clients
be
and
great
VIP
for them,
guests
that they're not
from
caught off
Europe.
guard.
This is the
They
club.
have those answers kind of at the ready, not just our
But for now,
policies.
when
Someone takes your face, how you react to that.
Yes, and it is, I mean, I think if you talk to any of your frontline staff, they will tell you that even somebody who's arguing a 15-cent fine can be off-putting. So in this situation, you can only imagine.
Yeah.
So that was a situation in Springfield. Other situations are calmer, but still very frustrating. Somebody can come into a library and just start walking around with their phone filming. And if someone does that and a patron doesn't want them to do it and then says to the staff member, this person is filming me, I don't like it, which they do.
They're infringing on the other person's privacy.
But is there an expectation of privacy different for adults than for children?
Depends on your policy, I guess.
Okay.
So I'm going back. I'm going way back. The right to film is allowed with reasonable limitations. Respect for the private patron privacy is one. Maintaining behavior policy norms is another. So if your behavior policy says, patrons may not engage in activity that is disruptive to the work or use of the space by another patron, and somebody goes over with their camera and is filming someone sitting at a desk, it's in your policy that they are not allowed. This person says, like, I'm trying to study, you're bothering me. It's in your policy. And then but the expectation should be that that auditor is going to raise a ruckus about that and say, this is my First Amendment right. Some libraries have in their behavior policy that filming or photography is at the discretion of the director. That kind of covers it. And that is, you can do that. That's legal. Yes, sir.
Is the new law going into affect school libraries?
Yes, all libraries in New Jersey.
Do school boards know that?
The question was, the first question was, does the freedom to read law go into effect for all libraries? And it does, public and school. And then the follow-up was, do the school boards know that? They do. And I know NJLA and the state library are working very hard to make sure that the necessary policies are in place. So I do want to share with you a couple of other stories that I said I would get to. And these just point to, in my view, how it speaks to book challenges and how critical the role of the trustees is, and how important it is for us to all pay attention and be aware of what's happening at the local level in our communities. So there's a librarian in Roxbury who, she was a school librarian, and she faced a challenge. This was, I believe, in 2021-ish, maybe a little bit later. And the challenge was against five books. No, I'm sorry, I don't recall the number of books, but they were all LGBTQ themed materials that parents wanted taken off the shelves. There were 6 parents involved in this. And she followed her policy, kept the materials on the shelves, and started receiving horrible threats, character assassinations, libelous and defamatory comments about her on social media. She happened to live also in Roxbury, where she taught and where she was a school librarian. And she filed a defamation suit against these people. And it turned out that she got support from Paniccio, I believe is his name. I might be butchering it. And the 5 people got support from this state representative who wasn't even in their district, but was up for re-election, supported the people who she filed the suit against, and got a lot of airplay and got reelected in his district. There was another instance in a town in Union County where a person submitted a book challenge to the public library, and the director went through the proper channels, read the challenge, you know, followed their policy and kept the book on the shelf. That person, because it never went, they dropped it, and this person did, and it never went any further. So even though it was in the minutes, it didn't really reach a height of public awareness. But this person then ran for the school board, and because somebody who was a library trustee was also a member of the local Dems group, they, for the first time ever in the history of this local Dems group, did a call, and made people aware that this person who wanted to be on the board of ed, was trying to ban these materials. I share these stories with you just to point out how important, first of all, how important the work that you do is. Working on the local level in support of libraries is so valuable, so critical, and so supportive of the work that we do. And as Dave said, we do need you. But it's really important to pay attention and be aware of what's going on locally, because it all circles back, yeah. Are there any other questions about others? Yes.
Yeah, Amanda, we had a few come in before the event, and although you've answered most of them.
I have?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me. One that I'd like to ask is, if a trustee happens to be in a library when an unpleasant event occurs, what role can they play? Can they actually be part of telling the the person to stop doing what they're doing, or should they in fact make sure that they get to an employee or a director to have them institute the policy that would be preventative of this continuing?
So the question is, if a board member is in a library when there is an issue with a First Amendment audit, how involved should the board member get to put an end to it? And I would say that unless there is a risk to the safety of patrons or staff, the board member should rely on the sound knowledge of the people, of the library workers, and find the director and just make sure that they're aware of what's going on.
Okay. Another one, if a library does allow photography and video recording, if it's being done in a normal place and time, not one that's restricted, but they're going on and on and on, is a complaint from another patron required to have them cease and desist, or can you just say enough is enough?
You cannot, so if the patron is filming and it just is going on and nobody's really being disrupted by it, is what you're asking?
Yeah.
That patron has to be treated like any other patron who's just sitting and reading a book all day. Unless another patron is actively disrupted, there's really nothing you can do.
What if it
Let them
disrupts
go.
the staff member?
If it's disrupting a staff member, it gets tricky, right? I mean, you have to be very careful. The staff member can walk away and go into a place where it's staff only, which is what my suggestion would be, and then notify other staff that there is somebody on the floor who is filming. But there is nothing that says that staff members have an immunity to a First Amendment audit.
But if someone is filming the front desk and the staff member is trying to do their work and they find it intrusive to have this person filming them for long periods of time, they don't have the right to ask the person to stop.
So the question is, if a person is filming a staff member trying to do their work and the staff member finds it intrusive, are they not allowed to ask them to stop? As a staff member, my suggestion would be to rely on your policy, which hopefully says that that patrons may not interfere with the work of other patrons or staff. But the goal here is to stay calm, cool, and collected. As you pointed out, they're not really auditors, they're provocateurs. But if they're looking for action, if they're looking for engagement, step away. Call someone out, take a break. Yes.
Could you use the patron privacy as a reason, especially if you're talking at the circulation desk and somebody was continuously filming, and even if you didn't have a patron, actively complain, but could you cannot film patrons coming up here with books in their hand that they're taking out. That's violating their privacy as to what they're taking in and out of a library.
Thank you. That's a good question. The question is, if somebody is filming and and the staff member is working with someone at the circulation desk, checking their materials in and out, or resolving a fee, or answering a question that is, violating the patron's policy. So I would be very careful in that instance, again, to just keep calm and say, I'm working with a patron and this is a private interaction. Can you just step back? I wouldn't tell them to stop filming. I would just tell them to move away.
We talked a lot about the library within its daily work. Are there any differences in how to handle the situation if you're running a program, showing a movie, any of that kind of thing, and someone comes in and becomes disruptive because they don't like the movie that you're showing? Is the rule of engagement still the same, that you I mean, you always try to make it as undisruptive as possible, but does anything change as far as their rights, goes, and that they're coming into a program instead of just walking around the library?
The question is if someone is disrupting a program, so you're saying if they're filming at a program?
Yeah.
Then you rely on your policy that says filming with discretion of by the discretion of the director only, or, this presenter has asked that the program not be filmed, or, I mean, if they're shouting and yelling that they don't like the program, then they can leave. I don't know I have not heard of that happening. People are much more likely to protest a program as it's advertised than, you know, when they see it advertised, than they are to actually come out and disrupt it. I'm sure that it's happened, but I haven't come across it. Mimi, Caitlin, have you did anything like that? No. So that's good. Don't give them any ideas. 1 second, you had a question?
Currently, we have a group of people who are expressing their political views and using the library as a backdrop, so to speak. It's in the news. What kind of steps can the library do? I mean, when I left this afternoon, you know, obviously, law enforcement was being involved and what have you, but the library itself, can they just like go, enough, close the doors and push everybody out because it has escalated beyond the library, so to speak?
This question is a doozy, and it's about a group of patrons in a library who are using the space to express their political views.
Right.
So that is not, libraries are designated public forums, and they are used for the for access to information, not for the expression of activities, and speech making is one of those activities.
Right.
So that's one thing. The second thing is that, you know, libraries are open for everyone. So anyone with any political opinion or view can come in, and they can, you know, find books on that opinion, that they agree with. They can find news articles to support their views, but they can't disrupt the use of the library for other people. That's generally a given in almost every behavior policy that I've seen, and that is, you know, currently that is upheld by law.
Thank you.
I just have one more.
It just,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yes.
Oh, it's okay. I just have a quick question. It's the idea that the policy regarding filming, just leaving it at the director's discretion. It seems like it's such like the easy way out on one hand. But does it open you up to more challenges than to your policy? In which case, then you've got to fall back on, well, either, I mean, I guess it's easy if you say, well, the director just says you can never film, end of story. But then you've got to get really, really careful about, well, the director said yes to this person, but not to this person. I feel like, I wonder if it's a bit of a trap in a way, instead of just having a really clear policy for the filming.
So asking if having in your behavior policy or rules of conduct that filming and photography are at the discretion of the director, if that's kind of a trap. I don't think so, because for a director to say there's no filming allowed at all, that's against the law.
Okay.
That's just a blanket, you know, we can't say that.
Right.
But we can say this presenter has requested no filming or photography. We can say we don't allow filming or photography of children at our baby story time. But I think what's good about saying it's at the discretion of the director is that there's a benefit in libraries everywhere, in my opinion, but in libraries in particular, to being flexible and being open-minded. And once you have it written that we're not allowing filming for X, Y, or Z, it's always harder to change those things. That's my thought on it. I feel like it's helpful to have that.
I was just
That
wondering,
language.
I just feel like having it at, I mean, and don't get me wrong, we have an amazing director and I'm sure everybody does too, and you're hoping that they're being incredibly thoughtful every time they're having to make that decision, but I almost feel like it's easier for it to be challenged in terms of, well, you let this person film this time, you didn't let this person film that time, instead of just having a really clear set of rules as to when you can and cannot film, with maybe the caveat at the bottom that the director reserves the right to restrict filming despite all these policies.
Right, so the idea being that you're saying that it could be seen as discriminatory.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a fair point. It has never come up
Okay.
at my library to my knowledge. But I think it does require the director to be
Really thoughtful every time
well,
they make
but
that.
not only lawful, but even-handed.
Right, yes, that's it, yeah. Yeah.
Even when it might bring controversy.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Thinking to what's going on at the Maplewood Audit,
Mm-hmm.
would this state law protect libraries from the federal government coming in and saying what should be taken off the shelf?
Dave is nodding his head, thank you. Yes,
Two different sets of law.
two different sets of laws.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Sure. So is it possible that we would get an executive order that says all this stuff has to come off the shelves? It's possible. Is it legal? No. Library stuff is governed at the minute. This is why the trustees, I mean, you guys have vast powers. Okay? Like when she says you gotta pass a patron code of conduct, that doesn't come from the feds, right? That comes from whoever the governing authority. Now, we have county libraries, certainly, and there is a state library, but you guys are all municipal libraries, right? That's where the power comes from. So if the feds said, just say Dave Hansen wrote a book, he said, okay, I have executive order, you can't have Dave Hansen's book on the shelves. It's not the way it works, okay? It can't. So that's good for us. But here's what you gotta remember about that. I'm gonna quote the great Spider-Man. With great power comes with great responsibility, because you know where the folks who maybe aren't in lockstep with us in this room are turning today. You can look at Wyoming. Wyoming is the one that's sort of the thing. So when they couldn't figure out how to get things banned, they tried to get people on the board, and they didn't challenge books. They created a weeding policy. And they said to the librarian, you want to tell us?
No, go ahead.
So they said to the librarian, you gotta weed to this policy, right? Which you guys all have weeding policies. You may not know you have a weeding policy. You may not spend a lot of time with it because you didn't think it was that big a deal. However, it really is, okay? And this librarian looked at this weeding policy and it was telling her she had to take off materials that talked about X. Wasn't the title. Not a challenge of a book. So one of the things that I would tell you is remember, with great power comes great responsibility. You are the trustees, you set these things. The reason we did the state law is because there was an open question about whether or not you could be sued and whether or not there was liability. It was not something that was settled in court. Nobody knew the answer to this question. And for the folks who are lawyers in the room, you know you don't want to be the test case, right? So that's why it was here. But you guys have the authority. You're the representatives of the community. What's on those shelves? It's not exactly what you say is on the shelf, but what you protect being on those shelves. So just remember that.
Can I ask a related question?
Sure,
We just passed a book sanctuary policy in our
Great.
library.
book sanctuary,
And it
thank you.
feels good. But how powerful is it? I mean, if somebody challenged that policy, how would we defend?
So if someone challenged a book sanctuary policy, how would you defend it? Challenge it how?
By suggesting that we're inappropriate in doing that, that there are certain books that we shouldn't be sanctuarizing. There was
You're following your collection policy standards. Somebody can disagree with what materials you
Where
have.
would they go to challenge it, I guess? Would they go to the borough council? Would they go to the county? Would they go?
They would go to you. They would go to the library board to challenge it.
And we have the ability unilaterally to repel that.
Absolutely. You have the ability to repel that
And
challenge.
there's no appeal.
There is that depends on how clear your policy is. There can be an appeal, that's called a request for reconsideration, and every library should have one as part of their collection development policy. You're gonna have to have one by December 2025. And that's going to outline how the challenger has to go about, getting the book off the shelf if they disagree with the director's decision and the board's decision. And it requires that it's public, and it requires that they, at least Maplewood, they give their name, they have to be a resident. They have to say what the book is and whether or not they've read it, or lie as to whether or not they've read it. And then they also have to offer what they would put on the shelf in its place. And that requires a little bit of thought, because what we're saying with that is, sure, we'll consider removing this book, but we're not removing the concept of this book or the themes of this book. Yes, sir, in the back.
So with these challenges and audits, escalating in many areas, including here in New Jersey, what do you think is the benefit of libraries having a lawyer who's versed in library law to be their advisor on policies?
So the question is, what would be the benefit? Is there a benefit to having a lawyer who is versed in First Amendment and the idea of challenges and audits? Are you saying being on retainer or being
Retainer,
accessible?
or, yes, someone who can advise, because as you say, trustees come from all walks of life. There may be a lawyer who's on board, but oftentimes maybe there's not. And maybe having a real lawyer to review policies and advise the board could be beneficial.
Having a lawyer to advise could be beneficial. So, New Jersey Library Association has an attorney. A lot of libraries have an attorney. I have presented with an attorney who works with a lot of libraries around the state. Some libraries rely on their township attorney. It is not a bad idea to have access to an attorney so that when legal issues arise, you have someone to talk to about it. It's not required, but it can be helpful. Yes.
I'm curious, anyone in this room experienced a book challenge in your library? And if so, what did you do?
A show of hands for anyone in this room who has experienced a book challenge and how you handled it. Dave, of course.
Sure.
So I've actually been part of several. I served in Kansas before I got here. And it's not to demean Kansas, it's just, we just did. I mean, it's everything she talked about, right? Someone's gonna be mad about a book, okay? When you get a book challenge, the number one thing to do, start by saying libraries are for everybody. the number one thing that ever happened in the collection policies, we didn't used to say you had to be a member of the thing. We didn't do that. And once people did that, it stopped a lot of challenges because a lot of people were not members of your community. They were just trying to get stuff around, right? Actually, I'll tell the story because it actually happened. Well, no, you want a formal one. You want a formal one, right? Yeah. You want a
I
formal
want your
one.
best story, Dave.
Well, it's the best story. It's from New Jersey, but it wasn't a formal challenge. So the way it worked, I'm gonna tell you, is this is a weird way of thinking about your collection, and it's not gonna end exactly the way you think it is. So we had, I was serving in Kansas, and there was a DK book on the history of the Middle Ages. And somebody brought this book, and it was written for folks in grade school. And it was talking about, I wanna say the Joshua story from the Bible, the Torah, and it got something wrong, and this person was living. We got this wrong, this book cannot be in the library. And so it came, and the way that it was a larger system, so first the selector wrote a letter, said, hey, this is a DK book, good reviews, this is why we did it, sent it back, person was unsatisfied, so then they get me. And I took a look at the book, and we reviewed the book, and we read the book, because when you get a challenge, you should read the book, just like we ask the people who challenge, okay? Again, these are your patrons. These are your community members. We take this seriously. And I read the book, and unfortunately, within that book on a different page, they had made an error of historical fact. Not the one that they challenged, but they made an error of historical fact. Now I'm in a quandary, right? Because this is a nonfiction book in a kid's collection that has an error that was not the one that was challenged. What are you gonna do? So I went to my youth services team and I said, hey, separate from the challenge, I got a book that's got a historical inaccuracy. If you know it's got historical accuracy, are you gonna recommend this for homework support? Because this is what we did with nonfiction kids books. And they said we couldn't in good conscience do that because we know there's a factual inaccuracy, right? So we ended up actually taking the book out of collection. And I had to write this letter to this person, and it was deeply unsatisfying for us both. Because I had to say, look, we're not taking it out because of your thing, but there is a different problem with the book, and so we are taking it out. And I remember sitting with our folks, and everybody was like, Dave, why'd you do that? Why didn't you leave it in the collection? Because you were not standing up. And I said, look, the collection policy here is to support homework help for our kids using our nonfiction collection. And this thing does not work because it's got a wrong information. Why would I keep wrong? How many people would want a book with wrong information on your nonfiction shelves? You wouldn't, you take it out. The next person, they said, well, Dave, are you gonna read every single book in the nonfiction kids search? I said, God, no. I don't have that kind of time. Nobody does. I said, but you're missing the point. The point isn't whether or not I know all the rest of those books are good. It's that I know this one isn't. Okay? When we are dedicated to a collection of policy, we are dedicated to the policy, even when it doesn't work out exactly. So that's a weird story. And I know you're like, oh, I fought them back. No, we found something wrong with this book and we took it out. I did have one in New Jersey, it's Buckles. And I had a woman call me up. She said, Dave, I'm very concerned. She had a book in mind. I'm not gonna tell you what the book is, but it's in the LGBTQ ranks. She said, I think what I'd really love to happen is at your next system council where all the people gather, I want you to talk about this book and whether or not it should be on the shelves. I said, ma'am, this is a great idea. I go, but I want to just work through the problem with you. Again, when you're in the middle of a challenge, I want you all to remember, this is your patron too. This is your patron too. Now, sometimes we don't love our patrons all the same. I'm just telling you, there are patrons that I did not love in my life, and I still do not love, but they are my patrons. And so it's my job to really meet her where she is. And I started talking to her, I said, hey, I know you want to talk about this. I said, so let me just get this straight. You want all the books that everybody finds a problem with, and we're gonna bring them up in a meeting, and we're gonna talk about whether or not we should have them on the shelves. She said, yes. And I said, do you think one of the books that you like is gonna end up in this conversation? She thought a little bit about it, and we talked about the book that she liked, which you know. And I said, there's a lot of problems in that book, and we probably have to talk about that, right? She said, yeah, I get it. I said, so just, if you think about it, how many books are we gonna have to talk about at this meeting? And she said, well, probably a lot. I said, so how long do you think this meeting is gonna go? And she said, probably a very long time. And I said, so do you still want to pursue this? She said at the end, she said, well, maybe not. And I closed by saying, look, you're a patron. And we have reconsideration policies for reasons, okay, folks? Again, do not take that, again, I can't emphasize enough the idea that it's your patron who wants you to, that's upset about something you did. Just because they're upset doesn't mean you don't do, like you take it off. But we're for everybody, and we gotta hear all voices. And that's why you have it, that's why there's a process. Normally it goes for the selector answers first, and if they don't like it, then if it's usually there's somebody above the selector, eventually it comes to you. And if anybody got to see the great photos from the Glen Ridge, I think Glen Ridge Public Library, yeah.
Talk about the Glen Ridge, because that was about the best experience ever.
So, this is an example of how following policy and procedure when it comes to a book challenge does work. So Glen Ridge Public Library in 2022 received a challenge to a book on the shelves. Five books. When the challenges went through the proper channels, and it was from a group of residents in Glen Ridge. They were residents and they were a group. And I will say, the majority of challenges to materials do come from book groups. And that is partly why having that request, do you live in this town, is really important, because these are groups, Moms for Liberty is a very good example. They have very far reach, and you could very easily be getting a request for reconsideration through email that is from someone who doesn't live anywhere near your town. So back to Glen Ridge. So newly minted director Tina Marie Duty did her due diligence and brought this challenge to and read through the books and denied the challenges, said we're keeping the books on the shelves. The challenge to the materials was they appealed, this group, and so that it became public, and please correct me if I'm missing anything. And so they then had to bring it to the board. And board meetings, library board meetings are public. Anyone can come. So the board and Tina made sure that everybody knew about this. And they received such wide support from the community that they had to move the board meeting to one of the local elementary schools, to the auditorium. Dave was there. I don't know if you went, Caitlin. I didn't go. You were there. Thank you. Are you from Glen Ridge?
No.
Okay, thank you. So the board heard the reconsiderations, heard the challenges, and voted unanimously to keep the books on the shelves. And that was the end of that. But go ahead.
Yeah, one more thing about that. If you want to know how a board can advocate, think about what this board did. So what they did is each book got assigned to a board member. And that board member read the book and reported back on how they felt it worked with the collection development policy, right? So you want to know how you as a board can make a difference? There you go, buds, because this is how it works. And that was one of the most amazing things to see a board member. And I mean, these were like, this was not Like, these weren't even crazy books that we have to think about. These were regular books and the board had a great time, and I will say it was one of the greatest meetings of one of these. If you can find it online, find it,
You can.
because, yeah.
I mean, that auditorium held, I think, 350 people. It was
They're
standing room only.
yeah.
It was standing room only, and it was also the middle of February, and it was one of the coldest nights of the year, and all of those people came out. All of your people came out. So, any other questions? Because that's a nice high note to end on. I want to thank you all for being here tonight and for the work that you do every day. Thank you for your support. Thank you to Caitlin and Tom and Darlene, Dave. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Where, I had another piece of paper, what did I do?
Is it the little blue one?
Yeah. Magic was.
I don't know.
Oh, there-
Oh, I left it on my chair, I'm sorry. Thank you, sir. Well, how about we give Amanda another round of applause? Fantastic, and very important, and doing this well. Sure. Just a couple of more things, before we go, if you won't mind putting up with me. One of the things that we ask everybody to do, and I harp on this a lot, is please complete the evaluation form. They're exceptionally important. We do a lot of programming in the trustee development committee. We do roundtables, which I'll explain in a few minutes. And the lion's share of what we do and what we provide for you comes from you. You tell us in these evaluations, not only what you thought of Amanda's program, what you liked, what you would like to see in the future, what you would like us to present to you because you want to learn about it. And we take that extremely seriously. And we try very hard to provide you with what you ask for. So please complete the evaluations. As I said, we take them very seriously. You will be given them, Darlene will be sending them out, probably tomorrow. And please return them. Also, the slides and this, presentation will be recorded and be available. When will the slides be available, Darlene?
In a few days.
Okay, in a few days, that's usual, thank you. This also gives me a quick moment to plug a little bit about what we do when I mentioned roundtables. Roundtables are forums where trustees get together, mostly online because, again, we're a very large community and I was talking to Dave about it before, we go from Milburn to Mawa, we go from Livingston to Hoboken, and with all the technology that's available, it is kind of unfair, if nothing else, to ask people to drive a lot of miles to get to a place when they can sit in their PJs and talk on Zoom.
Not that we think they sit in PJs.
Why?
They're fully dressed.
Yeah.
They're fully dressed.
From here. So, but on these roundtables, we thought of them a couple of years ago and they've become very popular. We try and do 4 to 6 a year. And again, it's an opportunity. They each start with a focus of something you want to talk about, and you come and you talk with your other trustees, you do some networking online, you get some information, you tell us what's going on in your library about things. One of the things we've done is that's how we got our program for telling people they should have library attorneys. It's very important that a library have its own attorney because they know library law. And quite honestly, we've had a couple of cases where the situation that required an attorney was at counter purposes for the municipal attorney. And therefore, I see some nodding heads, therefore, that's not a good idea to use the municipal attorney. Most places that have them on retainer, it's not like, there are some libraries that have the attorney come to every board meeting. But most of them just have them on retainer for when they're needed, and and a lot of that came from roundtables. As a matter of fact, our next one is going to be on June 12th. It's going to be a networking opportunity. It'll be at Paramus. And Lynn Kloss, if you laugh at this, I will hate you forever. The topic is advocacy for libraries. And if you will bear with me, we had a program a number of years ago called Advocacy for Libraries. And I go back to the evaluations. And they came in and they were mostly wonderful, except this one evaluation said it was great, except there was far too much information about advocacy. Okay, so please don't anybody say there was far too much information about the First Amendment tonight. But seriously, so that's what it'll be about. It's advocating for your library, what you as trustees can do to advocate for the library, and how you can interact if you have a friends group or a foundation, because you can all work together, because some of, as you know, trustees can't fundraise, and that's usually a big thing for libraries. So, that information will be going out. It will be, as I said, it'll be June 12th in Paramus. I also want to mention one more thing. We have a trustee mentoring program, where it's for where maybe new or newer or even more long-term trustees can work with a mentor, not necessarily on your own board, to find out things about what your role as a trustee really is. The program, we ask for people who want to be mentored, and then we ask for trustees who've been around a while if they want to be as mentees. The program has been on hiatus for a little bit, basically because of the fact that there's been a problem with being online and all. But as things are opening up, we will be getting back into that shortly, and we encourage everybody who would like some information to sign up for that. And we also have a trustee talk newsletter that we send out every month. And if you would like to be part of that, Darlene has a bunch of these little blue pieces of paper, the way we ask you to put down your name and your email address, and we'll add you to our library list. And this way you'll find out about upcoming events and that sort of thing. Did I cover it all now? Thank you. Yeah.
The trustee newsletter, if you were already on our email list, you don't have to sign up again. This would be just if you want to join that. And as Tom said, we have our newsletter, and we also send you information about upcoming trustee events. So if you're not on the list and you'd like to join the list, she's outside on the table, and you just finish your name and email address.
Can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
Thank you. So you'll be getting 2 surveys, because as part of my work with Law for Librarians Trainers, I am required to offer you all an anonymous survey after I present. I would really appreciate the feedback. It is anonymous. I actually have to request the survey answers. I have just completed 1 year of a 2-year commitment, and there's always room for improvement. So please reach out. I also am here to consult or have any kind of confidential conversation if there was an issue you didn't want to discuss this evening. Thank you again.
Thank you. And again, thank you, Willa, for coming. For those of you online, thank you for being there. We still have a lot of refreshments available, so please feel free to indulge in them. And it's great to see everybody in person again, and we'll be having another program sometime in the fall. We'll be announcing that soon, and thank you very much, and have a great night.